Hello again. This is Jack McCoy, and welcome to my channel, Singerman USA. And here I post a variety of volumes of mastering the art of singing. And so far, volume 1, it was addressing intonation and basically how to sing on pitch and little tricks as to how to do that. Number 2 video, volume 2, was basically establishing some vocal exercises called vocalises in the classic industry anyway. And both of those, two of you just worked on those, starting from the lower ranges into the high ranges like I was talking about. Keep expanding on that, keep exercising your voice. Your voice will grow. Even what seems like screechy tones in the high notes, sooner or later will fill in if you just keep working it. It's like a muscle, you keep working it all the time. And third thing, on this volume today, I want to discuss two things. Number one of which is breathing, breath control, that kind of thing, and also dynamics. Now, these are all mechanical things. Some people think, gee, if I just want to sing, why do I need to be involved in the mechanics of singing? Well, here's the thing. Doug Henning once said it so beautifully. As a magician back in the 90s, he was pretty famous back then. He said magic, basically, was all these mechanics that you had to study, but when you transcended the mechanics of what you're doing, it becomes magic. And that, I think, is exactly how it works here. Because sometimes when you're working on this some of this stuff actually might become pretty, easy for you. You might have mastered some of these things already as an accomplished singer to some extent. And then there might be a couple things you might have noticed that you maybe people said you need to work on, or you felt you needed to work on. And so as you're going to be a singer, you should probably master all aspects of singing. And that makes you even better, more expressive, and more easy to listen to as well. So anyway, basically the thing about breath or breath control is that, as my voice teacher Dorothy Fisher pointed out to me, is that the lungs are basically pear-shaped. It's like they're not just kind of round things. They're not like completely rectangular. Actually, they're narrow on the top and they're bigger on the bottom. So particularly when you're singing long phrases, as you do in classical music, or a lot of music anyway you do today, any really good singers you're going to hear really can do long phrases at a time. And the reason they can do this is because they know how to handle breath control. And sometimes it comes instinctively with people, but it's always good to work out the mechanical aspect, because if sometimes you're starting to run into difficulties, it probably is because you didn't get enough gas. You didn't take enough air in your tank before you approach those long phrases and things. So when you take a short breath, which happens to be the real common thing, is that you just want to take a little short breath like that kind of thing. And the thing is, usually short breath just fills up kind of like the top of your lung. But if you can practice kind of what they could call the diaphragm, you might hear that a lot and things. Well, the thing about the diaphragm is that you can kind of pull the air in all the way into the bottom end of your lungs. You just kind of get used to kind of feeling it kind of expand around your stomach area. Just kind of suck it in, feel like you're coming in from down here. Well, when you do that, you're kind of filling up the tank all the way from down there up to the top. And there's times when you can actually take too much air. It's just that you kind of get used to how much to take for the phrases that you need. But too much air is usually not the problem. It's usually too little amount of air. And when you hear people singing, sometimes they can't get all of their phrases, have to stop and take a breath and kind of things. Well, that can really mess you up, even in the performance or even when you're doing auditions and that kind of thing. I gear a lot of this because there are going to be aspects of auditioning, things I want to address in future volumes, is all the things you can do to make your auditions go as best as possible. And one of those is taking that. When you get nervous, it's real easy just to take a little short breath, and then you're going to start singing. You're going to find out you run out of gas, and then that makes you look very amateurish. In that respect, amateur is normally a good thing because it means a lover of what you do. But when people are looking at it as professional singers, they think that's something just not taken as seriously. You're just not taking your art serious enough for what they're looking for. So that's why I say you need to master these things. So anyway, like I said, little thing, just hold your hand in your stomach, just feel yourself taking it in, feel your stomach kind of expand out a little bit, and kind of get used to taking in your breath that way and gassing up just from the bottom up anyway. So that's a breath thing. And like I said, I might have said before, and if you repeat some things, that's probably because they're important. But one of them is that it could take you 5 minutes to learn something, like I just told you, but it takes you maybe years or however long to actually master it, because like you got to get used to doing it, and you do it while you're singing. You don't even get to the point where you don't have to think about it. This becomes kind of second nature to you, and that could take some practice. So like this, because you're familiar, okay, I'm familiar with that or whatever, you might want to weigh it out against what everything you do is like, okay, when I ran out of gas here, oh, maybe I wasn't gassing up quite enough. Maybe checking how I'm breathing. Maybe I wasn't breathing up enough there. Maybe there's something what that guy's saying, So it's just things I'm trying to do to help you along anyway. So also, dynamics is the other aspect of singing I wanted to share with you. And that is, most music is written, and I recommend that if you're working on something, it's never too soon to woodshed things, to work on things, even long ahead of what it is you maybe have a purpose for it. Because then you got a whole variety of things to look at. And if, for example, you come up on audition for a show, or what it is you want to be in a show, is that you have a lot of things you've been working on, and you can kind of see what suits the particular audition you're going for, what kind of show it is, what kind of music it is, and you have a variety of things in your repertoire. Well, you can pull some out of your hat and kind of have you on the ready. And one of the ways is there's certain songs and things you like, you think would be good for you for auditioning. And well, this is a thing that when people record songs and that kind of thing, especially when they're established as an artist, there are people in the recording industry and or music publishing business sit down and listen to those songs, and they turn them into music. You can actually find things in your music stores. I'm a big proponent of supporting your local music store. And, if you like Lady Gaga, whatever it is you like, you go in there and you see if they got a music book by that artist. And then what they'll give you is if you'll get a book of songs, and they'll all be written in written form. A little windy here. Vegas is a very windy town. But anyway, one of the forms that come in is this, what they call a lead sheet, which is basically just the melody. And notice there's some chords written over the top of that. Now, if you're able to play guitar or piano, something like that, that's going to be a great asset to you, because while you're playing these, you can play the notes out and the melody, and you can drop chords in, and you can hear what it sounds like. And that's a lot of how the music books come these days. However, some of their better books really come in full written. In other words, they're full melody line like this, and you'll have a piano accompanying underneath that. So if somebody plays piano, you got a pianist you can work with, sit down and plop that music down in front of them, they can actually play it for you, and you can actually hear all the harmonies behind it, and you can work with it that way. I always people jump right in, no matter if you read music or not, is get accustomed to things like this, because the little handy-dandy pitch pipe I mentioned in volume 2, the exercise version of the thing, is it uses to establish the range of your voice. But also is that there are notes on here that you'll notice that they say whatever is their note. And well, whatever it is for here, for example, this will say like F, for example. Well, you find the F in a little pitch pipe, and that basically shows you what the chord will sound like behind that particular note. There'll be times in the future that I might try to get into some of the more basics, if you don't know how to read music, is to basically know what each one of these notes are. And we'll do that some other time anyway. But anyway, this is one aspect, like I said. Now, the dynamics about breathing specifically is that when you see things written, and you'll come to a point where there's a comma or a period, that's the end of that phrase. And so you're going to be singing that song all the way up till you get to the end of that phrase, and that's where you can take your breath and move on to the next phrase. And there are a variety of things like that. They'll usually come as commas, which means you haven't really reached the end of the phrase, but this is the point where you just kind of make a hesitation, take a breath, and then move on and finish the thing. And musically, things are written that way that makes musical sense. It isn't like you just had to stop and take up in the middle of the thing. It's just like it's phrased in the way that you may have finished what you're saying, but you just kind of take a little breath so you can finish what you're saying. And that's kind of how that works out. This little song right here, which is Don't Take Your Guns to Town by Johnny Cash, has a variety of little things poked in it, which are little dots like colons. And that's because there's a little he kind of skips between "Don't take your guns to town, boom." So it's kind of like all of a phrase. We're taking little gaps in there, and he uses these colons anyway, little dots, little dots anyway. Now the other aspect of dynamics is, how, see this one, this says moderately. Well, if you get into music a lot of times, they're actually making use of Latin terminology. And you'll look at that going, what the heck is that? Well, for Latin, for example, be moderato. It'll say moderato. Well, here they put in English it just said moderately, because probably they figure the people are going to be buying this book going to read English better than Latin. But not to fear. That's what they got Google Translate for. Another really good sourceful tool that I use a lot is that you just go search Google Translate and you pick the language that it's in and the language you want to translate it to. And you just pick those two things. Well, you pick something on a piece of music that you don't understand what it means, put it into Google Translate, and it'll I would probably pick Italian first, because actually a lot of the phrases that are written in Latin are pretty much Italian. And then you can see what the English translation for what that means is. And you'll see all variety of things. Some of these are relative to tempo. Like this one, basically all the dynamics he shows you is the tempo to do the song. And moderato is like, moderately, as you might guess. It's just kind of like, tempos are really driven by heart to me, as the base of the heart. A moderato was just kind of like a normal heartbeat. It's just kind of like, you just kind of bum bum da 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 da, and that's kind of moderato. Whereas it had said something like largo, that would be slow, and that would be much slower than that. And then if it goes into like usually says things like adagio, moderato, or it'll say, I'm trying to think of some of the things are faster, things like that. Can't think of it right at the moment, but usually they'll say words that actually mean more vibrant or lively and pick up the tempo and that kind of thing. Sometimes it might even tell you march tempo. There's a whole variety of things we'll say. But it's good. But get the music that you'd like to work on, get it in a sheet music form, and even if you don't read music, you kind of see, like, when the notes go up, the sounds go up. When the notes go down, the melody goes down. And you get kind of used to seeing how that works, because later when we're filling where actually some of these notes are, well, you can use your old trusty pitch pipe and you can actually find where it is exactly, what the note is, and you can blow the pitch. For me, I'm a little more complicated in that I have to pitch my voice low. Most of the things are written for more moderate to high voices. I got a low voice, and so I actually learned a whole variety of Johnny Cash songs and had to put them into the original keys. And they don't come in the original keys. They come in things like this, which establishes more of a moderate type of voice. And I'll have to go back through them, and I'll have to put them down to the keys that I know that song is written in. And that's because that's where my voice is too, is that I have a low voice like Johnny Cash. That's one reason I picked up going to use him for. It all started when, as a gondolier, I had a friend named Cecilia, as a gondolier name her was Kelly Vaughn. Very popular here in Vegas. She does a whole variety of things. But what she's doing at the time was Reba. There was next door, it was called the Imperial Palace at the time, and they had personal dealers. And basically, they would get up and do a little program of Reba, and then she'd get down and she would deal blackjack. And I thought, well, there's another skill set I'd like to add to myself. So I decided to pick on Johnny Cash because his voice was right in my voice range. I did a whole program with Johnny Cash. I submitted it to him and never heard back from him a while. Next time I saw her, so what's up? And she says, oh, they decided to discontinue the program. So I was left with a whole repertoire of some Johnny Cash stuff. I posted things on some of my websites. You go to my Facebook site, you'll see tribute to Johnny Cash, Johnny Cash tribute singer. But this leads me to the final point I'd like to mention. There's a variety of things I mentioned about my website at the beginning of this video. Today I saved it for the end. And that is because there's one of the things that's a page on there that says, in the spirit of Johnny Cash. And you'll see a whole little story I wrote about that. And because while I was studying this Johnny Cash study, I was reading his biography and all that sort of thing. And around that time, actually, there was a lot of these things going on in the world where there was terrible things happening, where people were doing mass shootings and this, that, and the other thing. Well, yeah, we had a terrible one here in Vegas, you may well have known. But long before that ever happened, I was just thinking, well, gee, Johnny Cash really, one thing I admired about him as a songwriter, and I do songwriting too, is that I appreciate the fact that he addressed things that were not entirely comfortable all the time. Now, if you just want to focus on just the mastering art of singing and not really care about what else I have to say here, that's quite all right. You might want to tune off at this point. But for people who are involved in, like songwriting or appreciate songwriters and that kind of thing, well, as a songwriter, I just kind of wondered, like, what would Johnny Cash, how would he address some of the things that are going on in the world today? And that is where I got into that thing about In the Spirit of Johnny Cash, and where there's a page specifically on my website, and even on my Facebook page, is called In the Spirit of Johnny Cash. And it links to a couple of songs, one of which, and the first of which, was called Ghost Dogs, A Call to Arms. Basically what it was is just kind of something that came out of that. While I was thinking about this, what Johnny Cash would have to say, and there it was. It's like, it was just kind of a way of calling on people who have the ability to, watch out for other people. I wasn't calling on vigilantes or any of that kind of thing. It's just people who are kind of on their own, who I consider kind of like protective spirits. Just the kind of who watch out for other people, and just sort of, one of the lines is hide in plain view. Like, in other words, you look like any normal kind of person, but you have more of a skill set to protect other people. And these are a lot of times people who have served in the military, people who have served in our police forces and that kind of thing. And I know people like that, and they do this. They just kind of keep an eye. They just watch out. And so anyway, if you have the time and inclination, just listen to that song in the spirit of Johnny Cash page, and also Ghost Dogs, A Call to Arms. And that basically just kind of tries to set the tone for, what kind of guy like me do, about all things that go on. Everybody talks about what should be done, but I'm thinking, what as a songwriter, what can I do, and that's basically, that song came out of that. It was just kind of a way of trying to, bring our attention to that, kind of be on the alert and watch out for each other. That's kind of what it's about. Another song on there too is, Johnny dealt things pretty directly with sometimes, and sometimes not even the easiest of subjects. But there's a song on there called, I'm blanking out now. Anyway, but there's another song on there too that basically addresses basically people who get into the mindset where they're kind of working themselves up into doing something like this. It basically it speaks to them, and just kind of trying to wake them up a little bit about, you're just looking at things on this side, but you might want to consider the other side of things. On the Other Side, I think is on the name of the song. It's called The Other Side. And that's like, while you're considering these things and you think you're going to be able to get away with stuff like this, consider the other side. Anyway, hope you'll check some of these things out, but hopefully too you'll find something of interest in these. And I really hope people who are maybe younger, or not sure they want to spend the kind of money and resources it takes to steady voice, to forward this kind of thing onto them, so they can kind of get some practice in them. They can start working on things, and at some point they want to do some voice study or more seriously, whatever, but they'll kind of have a skill set develop on their own that they can, think they work themselves up into being able to perform in shows, and or want to audition for shows, or that kind of thing. That's what I'm looking for in the future anyway. So, hey, thanks very much for your time, and keep on, huh?